Hello, everyone. This is your host, Susan Rosen, and I have a guest today by the name of Jeff Kelton. And Jeff is a really interesting person here. I think that what I really was most interested in having him come on is that he has actually been pointing more towards getting involved with relaxation and with your body. He has a Facebook group on it and he has a book. But he has a very interesting background and I'll ask Jeff to give us some information and kind of give us the story of how he's through the years kind of ended up where he is and come to the conclusions that he has. And I thought it was really interesting. One of the things that Jeff had sent me as part of a description of him and his life is that he said that he's been an incessant wanderer for much of his life. And I'm not sure that necessarily only means in his physical body wandering around, which I know he's done a lot of that as well. But I think it's more also having to do with the mind and the whole life experience, I guess maybe is a good way to describe it. So welcome, Jeff. And if you want to give us a little bit more information, I always think it's kind of easier for people to describe themselves than it is for me to start trying to pick and choose which pieces to talk about.
Well, thank you, Susan. Thank you for having me on your show. I was really looking forward to just having a great conversation and going to places none of us have maybe even thought possibly to go to, which is part of my wandering kind of process, you might say.
Yeah.
I like to discover things and uncover things. And partly when I said wandering, at some point in the middle of my professional development, I literally picked myself up and went on a journey for almost a year wandering around in India. So I put on hold what was a development thing. And then that created the problems in my life because I every so often had the urge, I felt compelled, I had to go back on the road. How do you build a career when you're constantly disrupting that? So that was been an ongoing challenge throughout most of my life, actually. This kind of process really started way back earlier on, from even when I was undergraduate and went into graduate school. I started out as a research psychologist, and I was one of the probably earlier pioneers doing research on meditation practice. Just was enamored. I was a child of the 60s and things, but there was a burgeoning kind of interest in that, but not much being actually researched at the time. We're going back to the late 60s, early 70s. Yep. And so, which tells you my age probably. But in any event, I
was there.
Well, cohorts, yeah. Which was actually fun time in certain ways, also very challenging.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. But that was informative. That really helped shape a lot of my interests and concerns. And at one place when I was in graduate school, there was almost no research being done on an experimental, professional kind of like research academic level. In fact, when I first introduced the idea to my supervising, professor, he actually fell off his chair laughing so hard because it seems like such an alien idea. And so, of course, I felt challenged by that, and I kept on pursuing it ever since. So, I got into doing my PhD was on meditation practice, a certain aspect of it, particularly looking at the nature of what were the underpinnings of why meditation, what makes meditation meditation, and in part it dealt with the whole nature of what attention is, and how there's different types of attention that can be cultivated, different from what we normally think of as selectivity. Yeah. So that became the burgeoning starting place of this kind of long journey. But I, just to give you a little more of the timeline I was on, I went ahead and re-enrolled in another program that they called the Retread program, when I went from being a clinical being a research scientist or psychologist into becoming trained as a clinical psychologist.
Okay.
And partly that I was really interested in the experience of what changes in us that would fit into this idea of what consciousness is. And I thought I'd be better served in playing with clinical work and working with healing.
Yeah.
And so as I got into that, and then I went through this program that qualified me for my internship back in New York City. I got caught up in an idea where I could not receive my licensing. I was short by 2 weeks of bona fide work experience. And I said, you know what? I'm going to take a little leave of absence here. And I ran off and I decided to go wander in India for a whole year. It started out only for a couple of months, but it just kept on going that way. So that opened the whole thing. But somewhere in this mix, I had already been playing with meditation. I was always interested in psychotherapy. And one of the big challenges that I saw in the field at the time, and it's probably still to this day, is how much therapeutic orientations, interventions that were done actually did harm to the client or the patient as much as maybe some healing. And what I mean by that was the kinds of interventions, particularly if you look at psychiatry, especially in some of the earlier generations of medications being used, had a lot of side effects. Now, if you were schizophrenic like that, you would be taking these medications that would create tardive dyskinesia, all these other kind of things. And it really was something that a lot of patients had difficulty with. It was an intrusion in a way. It was maybe a best possibility for the moment, but it wasn't necessarily going to be in the service of the biggest kind of outcome of as far as being holistic. And I was interested in what would be better that would be as least intrusive, that would be no harm or little harm as we help people, learn how to cope or whatever that might be. And I had an epiphany. I was hanging out in Rajasthan someplace in the middle of a heat period. It was like 34 degrees at nighttime, Celsius, which is very hot.
Yeah.
And I had this insight, and the insight had to do with relaxation. I mean, I've been working a lot through my meditation work and seeing the connection with relaxation coupled with attention to act forms that kind of way we actually learn to meditate. But what I began to recognize was relaxation was basically in accordance with what I think is universal. It's a universal principle. And in a way, it's in accordance with the universe. So we are doing no harm. You can't hurt yourself doing relaxation.
Okay, right.
And I began to look at that and realizing, okay, now obviously people had objections to even that, because some people, well, no, if you start relaxing, let's say if you're dealing with someone who has psychotic kind of tendencies or issues, you're going to bring up all kinds of stuff that they can't cope with. But that's not because of relaxation. It's just because of what they're dealing with. That too can also be dealt with. The real problem with a lot of that stuff is that people, they truncate it. They cut off. They retreat from, as something's arising, they stop. Oh, that must be hurting me. No, you're now entering into a healing process. That if you continue following that, it will unfold. So I think a lot of like treatment would actually truncate the impact that relaxation could have.
No,
so
that makes sense.
Yeah, so I began to kind of go on a mission that way. So that led me into then, when I came back from my journeys, I took up the course to become a clinical psychologist and actually start a practice. And ever since then, I've been picking up all these different threads in ways, but this underlying current of the nature of relaxing was always there. And the only other thing I'm going to point to is that the relaxing was not meant to be a momentary experience you have. It was a gateway towards connecting to your body, through which you cultivate what I call whole body presence. How we come alive to ourselves as an ongoing operation, you might say. So that's what became my whole work and everything else I've been doing, because like I'm no longer involved in clinical work. I'm now a transformational life coach, but this still runs through all of how I begin to work with my current clients. So that's a little bit of a journey, some of it there.
Yeah. No, it's so interesting. It makes so much sense. I think so many people just have never spent the time to really think it through. And I know from personal experience just how much so many of those prescriptive medications for people who have you know, some sort of psychiatric issues, because my mom was given a lot of them, and none of them had anything good. I mean, they always ended up with her trying to kill herself. I mean, it was just it was
much like that happening when
yeah.
in the clinical scene, that I was looking for something that might be gentler,
yeah,
and actually plugs into a self-regulatory process. Because in terms of letting go and relaxing and following that flow, if I can't handle it, there's almost a built-in mechanism around, so there's a stop. So you can always self-regulate as far as you can go until you're ready to return to checking it out further. But it's a journey.
Yeah.
And so that got me to think a lot also. And just to kind of jump ahead a little bit, later on in my life, I did a stint working for the military. And I was working with the war fighters and the families, dealing with like how to address the military lifestyle and all the redeployments that were taking place. But in there, began to play with how to work with the Army and the Air Force and other personnel to help them learn what relaxing could offer. And so I began to do trainings through the auspices of a lot of the chaplains, helping me come on board to connect with them.
Okay.
And out of that, I began to put together this kind of little like notes that became the book I actually published, called The Insider's Guide to the Art of Deep Relaxation. But the key thing that I was trying to bring home in the book, and it was meant to be part of a larger tome, but we've decided to just put it out there now rather than wait, had to do with shifting the sensibility about the nature of relaxation, not as a fixed thing you get, but as a process. It's like catching a wave that you surf. And if I can begin to catch onto the idea how there's an unfolding taking place that never ends. So, because most people, again, going back to this idea of truncation, they'll think in terms of, okay, now I'm relaxed. Now, but no, it's an ongoing process. Very simple idea. You can almost see this in action. For instance, if you took your hand and you made a fist and you tighten your arm and you held it there for a while, which is a typical thing they do in like, progressive relaxation. And then, so even for 10 seconds, then you let go, you just drop the arm, you just drop it down. You'll notice there's also, you can feel the releasing, you feel sensation in there. You can feel almost like tingling or a heaviness, warmth. If you keep following that, it doesn't stop. It just keeps going. Most people won't pay much attention to that. They'll go on to the next thing. Or that. If you stay with it, it just keeps unfolding itself. So that gives you a glimpse as to what is the direction of a relaxing process. So that's what I wanted to bring home, and out of that, emerge that. And this is now a journey, because if I continue following that, there's layers upon layers. You begin to become more attuned to very deep places in yourself that hold back still. And by opening to that, you realize there's subtler and subtle levels of where tension exists in your body that can be now released. You can be following that to the point where you realize you disappear. The self-concept begins to dissolve itself. In a way, you open up to where everything comes from source. There's a place where there's an emptiness. That grand vista that opens up is so much more full of potential. So that becomes a spiritual journey we're talking about. So I'm just thinking about that because we're talking about this as a process that has phases that can keep opening and expanding. And one of the big things I was really looking for, what makes me whole? Where do I start? How do I know what's true for me? And this became like a place that I began to recognize to where to start. because, I don't know about you, but I know that we get exposed to many teachings,
Yep.
from all different sources and stuff, and all these how-to principles and things like that. And it's almost like, well, what do I believe? What can I trust?
Yeah.
And I said, no matter what's going on, of all these wonderful ideas I could be exposed to and learn more from, the one thing that's really I can count on is I have a body.
Yeah.
No matter what's going on, this body's with me. If I'm not in my body, I don't exist.
That's true. Unless you're in a science fiction movie, right?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because a lot of practices, a lot of like mystical traditions, actually, a lot of them discount the body.
Yes.
They feel, well, I need to master the body so I can control it in a way that it does not disturb me or interfere with me connecting to God.
Yeah.
And there are a few other traditions, and one that I have some affinity for might be through Tibetan Buddhist practices, called somatic meditation, where through the body that I unfold the path towards God or towards spirit. And so there's that kind of idea in this. But along the way, if I'm lost and I don't know what's going on, I'm confused, I'm depressed, I'm whatever it might be, the first thing I know is I have my body still here.
Yeah.
Let me start there. So a good place for people who are listening to this, maybe a nice little practice to do, no matter what's going on, especially when you're walking, okay, or is to drop your attention down into your feet. Feel the sensation in the soles of how your feet meet the ground. Bring some awareness to how you are connected beyond your body into the ground that supports you. And that's a good place to start from, at least to find yourself. Automatically, when you're doing that, you're beginning to ground yourself into the earth, which is actually the base upon which we get a lot of support that we don't even recognize. So I know no matter what, I can do that.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like that. I'm gonna have to try that because I don't pay enough attention to my feet, and so I'm always tripping on things.
Well, what's happening is that notice if I bring the intention to connect to my feet, it drains away from this absorption into the thinking process. At least for a moment, and then I can stay a little longer with that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the practice. It's a way of working. Because I think most of the difficulty people have is being too absorbed in the belief that their thinking is the way through things.
Yes. Yes.
And quite frankly, most of it is pretty old, redundant stuff.
Oh my God, yeah.
Thinking about, you already have thought about. There's nothing that new in there. If I want to find something new, I need to change something in my organization of myself temporarily. That can invite in another possibility. So even the moment I get into the physicality of my being, I begin to open up a space that allows for something new to show up.
Oh yeah. Yeah, new and fresh, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, some other schools that I think you and I have had some common ground with really speaks to that a lot. But the point is that we are so self-identified with how we think. And there's something about this thinking process that's so seductive.
Oh my God, yeah.
I mean, it's compelling. I mean, my take on that in a way, one dimension or nature of what is thought is that it happens so fast that before you know it, is demanding attention to deal with it. And it begins to kind of shape what is now you consider to be real. But it's all made up. So anyway, it's a whole journey to explore and dismantle. And it's a marvelous kind of approaches to really looking at that to help you see the nature of that. For me, it doesn't matter what that is. If I can come back to my body and just open up to the letting go, I can globalize that experience. So even though you start with the grounding in your feet, eventually you realize, okay, there's more than my feet here. I have my ankles, I have my knees, my thighs, this torso. The whole of me has opportunities to be felt. So if there's a journey to take, is to begin to generalize that those partial places of locations of felt sense to how there's a general kind of quality about how that feeling is. And that's why I love the term felt sense, which I think was first termed by Eugene Genlin, developed an approach called focusing.
Oh, okay.
Which is wonderful, because he would talk about in psychotherapy what helps therapists actually be successful. And he was helping them see, by helping people connect to their bodies and having a felt sense of their life, they can confirm or affirm understanding in themselves. And so it was a way to gain insight. And there's a whole body of work there alone worth investigating. You're having a felt sense of my existence, my being, can be generalized into this kind of atmospheric quality. So that's what I am talking about when we talk about whole body presence. What is it when I can begin to feel the atmospheric quality? It's kind of like background thing all the time in my life, because no matter whatever I'm doing, this is always here. I can always be aware of it if I give some attention to it. I don't have to be absorbed in it, but I can still keep some awareness of the whole of my body as I go about doing things. So in a way, we're talking about another way of relating to yourself.
Absolutely.
If you understand, most people, when they want to do something, they pour themselves into the activity to the point that everything's absorbed in that, and they forget their body. You're lost to, yourself over time like that to get this one thing done. And they end up putting too much emphasis, too much stress. Like, how often when you're driving a car do you find yourself really grabbing the car's wheel, right? Well, how much do you really need to control the wheel? If I can begin to catch myself, I can let go of having to force myself in that direction and be more complete and whole. And this is actually one of the places where I used to train Olympic athletes. I had an opportunity to work with some athletes to actually come back to feeling the whole of their body as they ran, let's say. And what was happening, because most athletes, if they're not in touch with their really masterful, star athletes, are in their bodies. They know what I'm talking about. But the ones who tend to get injured, they're forcing themselves too much in, trying to make themselves run faster.
And out of balance, by me right?
Well, totally. I mean, because you're kind of going in a direction where you kind of skew, where you think the application has to be, to the exclusion of something else in your body. Coming back to your whole body, they were able to relax and stay inside that, but just expand from the whole. And they would improve their times. They would run faster. So that was like an interesting kind of shift in how they could perform better. So what I'm trying to talk to you about right now, I know I'm probably just on and on and on. I see that if I can really tune into the quality of this relaxing process, there's no end to the benefits that can be gained, both in terms of peak performance, health. It could save your life. And I have things that testimonies to talk about that. But it has a range of possibilities here.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think especially as we all get older, it's something we need to do more and more, because there's so many old habits that we've developed over the decades. And and so we just do stuff. It's like, oh, okay, like you were talking about with driving the car. But we get that with anything. Oh, I'm going to make a salad. Oh, I'm going to do this. And I'm sure I'm not alone in this. I find my thoughts going off in one direction while I'm and I'm doing things just kind of through habit. And it's that old mindfulness of being mindful of whatever you're doing and wherever you are. And
I think it's an interesting thing you're bringing up here, because in that mindfulness still is a challenge. Because when people start bringing attention to what they're doing, it's actually disruptive at first. It gets in the way. And a lot of people, this is not going to work for me because it's now upsetting how I normally do something.
That's the idea.
Well, it's the idea as a starting place.
Yeah.
And what we're talking about, once you disrupt, so much, it just helps bring in the challenge. Should I be doing it this way? A lot of things you're doing where it works just fine, but I'm not being very awake to that, and I'm probably not even enjoying it because I'm not awake to it. So if I can just be somehow still doing what I'm doing, but be attentive in terms of the physicality, the felt sense of that, it actually can enhance the joy of it. So that's another thing that happens.
Yeah.
So what about coupling ourselves, reconnecting ourselves? So there's this idea of being part of my body, not, dominating my body.
Right.
I think we talked about this earlier, but I think there's a message or thing I would want people to at least appreciate is that there's something about finding to be friends with your body. I think most of us have been brought up and raised that the body's a vehicle through which we can accomplish things. So it's there. I'll never forget, I had a supervising psychologist when I was going through my internships. He says, my body, what's that there for? Oh, it's there to carry my head around wherever it wants to go. It was just dumbfounding to hear him talk. It was like a disconnect. No, if I inherit my body, there's an inherent wisdom in there that will guide. You won't even have to think that much about a lot of things. A lot of things take care of itself. So it's another way in to really help you course correct or navigate.
Yeah.
And then, like I was mentioning before, there's this issue that because you're doing that, the body is by extension is part of an environment you're in. I'm not really separate from this environment. So by me being in my body and being comfortable, being acquainted with how it is, the isness of it, it almost extends out into the environment around it, the place I'm in. And with that sensitivity, I pick up cues, information that actually can help me. And I mentioned before, like saving my life or things like that. I mean, it's as simple as I remember walking down the streets of New York City, Manhattan, late one night, some kind of like street there. And, I've been working on myself this way. So I had a sense of this kind of way of being. And I felt these two people trailing me. And I knew darn well they were sizing me up of whether they should like mug me. But rather than even turn to look towards them, I just kind of dropped in my body in full presence and kind of own myself in all of what I was. They literally stopped, turned around, and walked away. And what this is, in a way, sounds kind of strange, almost mystical. It's not. It was very so in my body. I had a composure that they realized, you know what? He's not an easy mark. He's going to give us a problem.
Yeah.
And here, when you like read about like the samurai warriors.
Yeah, I was just going to say, that's like the martial arts. Yeah.
Exactly. You'd be so in the center, almost like you're in the middle of this web. So they could feel when they're going to be attacked from a distance.
Yeah.
Kind of quality. So it gave me that kind of But even to bring the point home a little better, I love body surfing. I love getting into the waves and just kind of, and I got back at one point I lived in Hawaii and I used to ride these big waves. But I was traveling in India this time. I told you I had taken this long leave of absence in my professional development. And I was down in Sri Lanka. And there was this one beach I was on that had a great break. And I went on the break. It was a good place. It's kind of, you can kind of body surf it. But then these world-class board surfers would be surfing the other end and things, and the waves were much bigger. Well, I started hanging out with them, just body surfing, and I was having a grand old time. It was wonderful because I was younger, stronger, and all that, and enjoyed the quality of what I was doing. And I was getting tired. I'm tired. So it's time to come into shore. And so I started swimming towards shore. And every stroke I took, I was going further out into the ocean because the current had shifted.
Yeah. Okay.
And so at one point I realized, Jeff, you just done killed yourself. I mean, they had this kind of momentary panic, like, oh my God, I'm not going to survive this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I just calmed myself down. And I got very into my body again, and this concentrated water, and felt all of me here in this water. And I was able to pick up a counter toe maybe 10 degrees from shore, kind of at an angle, and treaded water, catching this very subtle kind of like counter toe, and carried it away into shore. It took me almost an hour to get into shore.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
I couldn't even get out of the water. I finally reached the beach. I collapsed, but that saved my life. And I'm sharing that with you because what was making the difference was dropping into the stillness in my body, feeling the whole of my body. And as a result, feeling the extension into the environment I was in. I could pick up subtle cues that I could then track to help me out of that situation.
Yeah, that actually, I didn't do it quite so successfully, but I had when I was about 13 years old, I think we had went with my parents, and we went on a trip to Hawaii, and I had gone out on a surfboard, and I had gotten some lessons, and then the guy left me out there to practice, and the waves were they scared me. Oh, they scared me so much. And I couldn't, it's like I had to force myself just to go and get in, and I never went back out again.
I hear that, because there is a wonderful experience with that. But I think the that you're bringing up is the fear factor, that panic. And when that comes up in us, it blocks off possibility.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, automatically, anything I'm fearful, I kind of cramp down on myself. And even on a physiological level, I'm now constricting capillaries. The blood can't move more freely. So,
no, it was like a panic attack is what I had out there, is exactly what I had. But being 13 years old, I didn't realize that.
But we're talking about in those things, that kind of like dimension, you can see how that contributes towards what gets in the way of healing.
Oh my God, yes, absolutely.
A lot of times when you're confronted with some diagnosis, or say, people get panicky, they contract, they kind of brace themselves. I have to fight the good fight. They're doing an orientation towards their body again that's actually counterproductive to what would help them.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I mean, the relaxation again, this kind of yielding. The fear is the thinking about that. In other words, well, if I yield, if I let go, it'll consume me and I'll die quicker. The cancer will spread. No,
that's the opposite.
That's your thinking about
it. Yeah, actually the opposite will happen.
I need to marshal more of the resources that can contribute towards healing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's, and I'm bringing this up now because I realize a place where this could be very powerful is also how to manage pain.
Ah, yes.
Think about it. Anytime you are in an experience that feels painful or very, very uncomfortable, the immediate reaction is to cramp down on that, is to resist it in some ways. I mean, think about it. If it was really cold outside, what's the first thing you do?
Shiver.
You brace yourself, right? And actually, when you do that, you have a harder time dealing with the cold. I relax, I will find a way where the blood can flow.
Oh, yes.
There'll be more oxygenation and warmth can be generated. And that can make a big difference. But even more severe pain can really be managed that way too. And I can attest to that as well. I mean, a couple of years back, I was shot. I was got caught in the middle of some gang violence, and I got shot through the leg. And there are many phases to this process, but the thing that was most useful in the moment was that even though you can't help yourself, initially you react, you kind of like recoil. But I began to work with how to open up so it wasn't so focused or localized as far as the sensation. And so I'm blending it into the rest of my body where it was tolerable. I can manage it. And it helped me get through that until I got to the emergency room and stuff like that.
Oh, I'm sure. I have no doubt. It's I know a lot of times when I'm working with people and they start to really get up into their head about stuff, right? And they start to talk a little bit faster, and you can tell that they're just kind of tightening up. And I just say, okay, breathe. Just take a minute here and just breathe. Let's breathe. Let's do some deep breathing. And then we can kind of go back and talk about some of this stuff. But do me a favor and breathe, because you're not breathing.
It's a great thing to remind people of. And the breath is a powerful place. Kind of remind you how to come back.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes care of us all the time. And it's an interesting thing with the breathing. I mean, a lot of meditation practices focus on the breath.
Yes. Oh, yeah, a lot of them.
And a lot of it talks about, like, well, I need to control the pace at which the breath comes and goes. So you can pranayama things in yoga, which, if you're not sensitive enough to yourself or careful, could actually be harmful.
Oh, yeah.
Because you start kind of controlling how you think you're supposed to breathe.
Oh, yeah.
And the thing, it's so interesting about breath. If I just learn to make it my friend, I'm going to accompany it. Go for a walk with somebody,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Walk together for a while,
Yeah.
And so what happens is, like, rather than trying to make it anything, the moment I can just be with it and allow it to do its thing, it will change according to what has to happen. And more times than not, the breath will settle down by itself.
Yep.
And you'll get to a place of calm abiding where it almost drops away.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I have to breathe like 8 counts in, 8 counts out, which might be a good exercise for a short period of time.
Yeah.
But ultimately, we want to be in relationship that's more like a friendship. I buddy up to my breathing rather than trying to manipulate it. Yeah.
Oh, no, and I know there's a number of the teachers that I've followed, and some of them I've sat with, who will just say, follow your breath.
Yeah.
Just follow it, which I think is such a wonderful way of thinking about it, because you're not trying to control it. You're not trying to count it. You're just follow. Let your breath be the lead.
So imagine, by extension now, breathing is a good vehicle to understand the nature of relaxing as a process. You could take anything and begin to enter into a relaxing process. You just, same thing, you follow it. If it's a sensation you're having somewhere in your body, follow it. Yeah. And you'll find it'll keep unfolding itself.
That's right. That's
right. And there's other dimensions too, but at least that's a great way to start. Oh my God, yeah. Yeah. And breathe into it wherever you find it, then breathe into that part of your body. Amplify and enhance the experience of what is unfolding. So again, I'm paying attention to the part that wants to move.
Yes.
And on a almost metaphysical level, very fast. We talk about the nature of reality and the nature of the universe, and actually what's built in as part of it, it's in constant movement. Even, if you go and look at some of the research in physics, I listened to something very recently about this, and they would try to put an atom inside of the coldest possible environment, like Kelvin 0 degrees, right? And rather than it coming to a full halt, just stopping, freezing or stopping, they discovered that no matter how, cold, the bottom line they can get to, there's some kind of subtle movement taking place. It never stops. Which told me that means everything's in movement no matter what. Yeah. It's the Tao. Yeah. I'm a student of the Tao, and I'm a big practitioner of Tai Chi. A way of studying my body and how it can move. Yeah. So, and the idea is that we're always in movement. there's the stillness we experience is maybe the nature of space, but there's movement throughout it all.
Yes. Yeah. That continuous.
That hum, that kind of like vibration.
Yeah.
Something's there that's always the subtext.
Yeah. And it's your life.
So
that's
the more
the life force.
Relax, that way into this thing, I will come to places at times where I'm feeling this hum of life. This is the felt sense we're talking about. This is continuous.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, okay.
Even that right now. Notice how we take a pull.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. Absolutely. No, I got into that totally. In case you didn't figure that part out. Yeah. So what would be your suggestion for people who are looking for learning more about this, to bringing more of it into their lives? And I'll put on as a little bit of a caveat that, as with everything, there isn't really one thing that fits everybody, right? So it's not like, oh yeah, this is the only thing that's going to do this. So maybe there's a number of suggestions that
there are many ways you could play with it. I think the spirit of inquiry, of open-ended exploration, is probably the most important kind of like mindset to bring to the idea of relaxing. Rather than trying to predetermine what it's supposed to be, the only thing we are trying to be oriented towards is noticing that there's a movement in that. It's a process. It's an unfolding. If I at least keep that mindset in mind, I can approach any experience I have and ask the question, well, what could be more relaxing in what I'm doing right now? Whatever that might be, whether I'm walking, whether I'm holding something. And then you'll find that, depending upon what the activity is, some things I can't totally let go to. I'm driving, I don't have a limp and therefore lose control of the car, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you would talk about form. There's a certain way you move the energy. Well, it's not just, lax. You need to maintain some balance. So there are ways, but I can fill it out. So, if there's a way in which I'm going to move my arm a certain way, like in Tai Chi, a way of holding the arm that's circular, where I'm not just fixing it, but I'm allowing it to open up. So there's a relaxing inside the form.
Okay.
Well, let's do in life then, because we are form. So I can relax more into whatever form I'm in, rather than trying to limit it. Now, given that as a mindset and a way of thinking, I can play with anything, as I said before. I have a preferred thing I like to introduce a lot of my clients and students to. And classical. It has to do with the whole idea of how people enter meditation practices. And you maybe you've heard variations on this called the body scan. And a lot of times they may either start from the toes and move up through the body, or start from the crown of the head and move down. And the whole idea here, from whichever way you're moving, that you are imagining almost like an energy field or something that, as whatever part of the body it touches, it lets go. Now, the thing I would recommend is, rather than thinking about letting go or keep saying relax, which will work to some degree for a bit here and there, is to keep paying attention to what's the felt sensation there. So as I imagine like this light coming from the crown of my head and passing over like a ray or something over my body, as like I meet my forehead, what's it like to have a feeling that I have a forehead? What is the actual sensation of having a nose. What's it like to feel the space between my nose and my lips? What I'm doing is I'm trying to open up to an inquiry into the nature of the sensing, as opposed to making an image out of it. Because most people, when you start moving through, okay, forehead, I have the word there, or I'm making an image of what it must look like or something. But that's actually a remote sense.
Yeah.
When I'm looking at things, that's merely designed in a way, a lot of times perceptually, to deal with things that are more distal, more at a distance. And this is coming from my experimental background in perception, for instance.
Yeah.
But we're talking about, it's not as immediate as the felt sense, which is much more proprioception and inception, these other kind of qualities that bring us closer to the alignment of the way the body operates, that I feel physically. So thinking about the sensation can be actually a game changer for many people. So that would be one thing to play with as you move through the body, and not to dwell too long. If you start with the top of your head and you're moving down, just keep moving.
Yeah, that's why it's called a scan, right?
Scan. It's like this, you're doing a CAT scan, or you're doing, whatever. We're talking about is to keep it moving as it moves down. So, because what will happen, especially in the beginning, a lot of people will get lost to it. We'll even forget, well, where was I? I'm now dreaming. And what I say is, wherever you thought you last were, go back to that place and continue.
Yes, exactly.
So the idea is keep moving through the whole thing. If you do that at a certain very gentle kind of pace, not too slow, not too fast, you could do that over the course of like 5-7 minutes. That's a great practice. And then at the end of doing that, take a moment just to feel as best as you're able the whole of yourself all at once. And then start again, do a second wave. And in this way, what's happening, and what I like to speak into, is that by working in this way, it's like you're kind of remembering yourself. I really literally mean that from the term of recollecting parts of yourself into a whole. Oh, here's my ear, here's my knee, oh, that belongs to me too, here's my toe. It's like you're going through that. It's almost like a chance to remember, oh, all these are me. I can remember myself. And that quality, eventually, if I keep working just with this alone, you start to feel that kind of, that buzz, that kind of quality, that atmospheric sense of wholeness. That's what I feel would be the big thing that begins to evolve eventually. And it can happen in a moment. Some people just get it right away, and then it looks like they can't get it. So I think a practice is really helpful that way. So one way of playing with things.
Yeah. No, I like that. And it's, anybody can do it, right? I mean, you don't have to be, what's the right word? I can't think of what the right word is, but anyways, you can have any kind of issues. You can be sick in bed. You can be, I don't know, maybe you have lost your limbs or something. I mean, it's one of those kinds of things that it literally can be done by everybody, period.
There's no exception to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Other than not having the ability to attend, there could be some kind of limitations there. But put that aside, no matter what your situations are, a lot of illnesses, or even when you're cold, a lot of times people approach the idea of meditation or relaxation practices. I have to be in the right state of mind. I have to be the right
yes.
I'm suggesting just the opposite.
Right.
If I start with where I am, I start with I'm in pain or I'm in suffering. I can, if I feel what that is, without judgment. You see, here's the fair witnessing idea. But take it in without trying to make something out of it.
Yes. I like the no judgment part.
When I come full stop into just the being of this moment, it begins to unfold itself because it's all in movement. There's nothing static here.
Yeah.
So
and I
start with anything that way.
Oh yeah, no, I think that's great, and I think the other thing that comes out of that is, people find that it's changing their lives in little ways without even realizing it. It's one of those kind of practices that just, things, you can let go of things easier. You can find that you're not getting as upset about things.
Absolutely, because it's not like you have this instantaneous aha.
Yeah.
As much as once in a while,
although
it
you
does
can
show
have
up.
those, but yeah.
Yeah. But it's almost like drip by drip, drip. It just kind of keeps
exactly.
and you sometimes after a while there's a cumulative effect. I used to kind of tell my when I had my psychotherapy practice, it's sort of like putting money in the bank, one coin at a time, and you accumulate something. You reach a certain tipping point where you have wealth.
Yeah. Oh
and
my
so
God. Yeah.
you're giving yourself something that accumulates actually.
And the other thing I think that goes along with that as well is that people will find that they look forward to it and that they miss it when they don't, quote unquote, have time to do it today.
And
for one
so
reason or another.
No, that's why I think great to do a practice,
Mm-hmm.
not to limit it to staying on the cushion
Yes.
or the chair or the bed, whatever it might be.
Yep.
In fact, that reminding yourself or using things in the environment that could even trigger that, where I can stop right now and feel myself in this moment. Every time I do that, I'm giving more bank.
Yep.
And again, it's cumulative. It will begin to shift things.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Well, I think that sounds like a really good place to kind of wrap this up, because I think that we've talked about some really good things. We've given people some things to think about. We've given people some things that they can do. And I think, I don't want to overwhelm anyone at this point.
Yeah, I can talk forever because I'm so fascinated with what this really opens up. It's almost like if you just start with this one idea of the relaxing process, the universe opens up to you. There's so much more potential that gets revealed. But I would, anybody that would love to, connect with me more about some of this stuff, they can use my email address. I think I have that in the material, right?
Yeah, and I'll put that up.
And then as a special, well, for your listeners, I'd like to also give you a starting point. The book is there on Amazon, but I can gift you a free copy of the book as a PDF version if you write to me through the email. And just let me know. I'd be interested in a copy of the PDF. I'd be happy to send it to you. And I would want to encourage people to join my Facebook group. Just ask to become a member. It's dedicated to all these things we're talking about the nature of relaxation, whole body presence. The other thing I'll say is that I also will offer anybody who is interested to explore more, how does this relaxation actually can be applied to my life, my circumstances. I'm open to having a conversation with you. And we just set up a time we could talk and look at what your circumstances are and seeing how would that apply to what you are working on, whether it be performance, business, health, well-being, you name it. There's so many places we can go. So now it's specialized to who you are. So I'm happy to offer that.
Okay, that sounds great, and I will put all of that in the show notes, and it will be there for anybody to so that you don't have to go run and get a pen or a pencil right now. The email address and everything will be in the show notes for you all to see. So thank you very much, Jeff. And hopefully we can have you come back another time. I have no doubt you have lots more good information to share. And I am going to do my usual little message here, which is that I am not a doctor, and this is not to be construed as medical advice. And if you are having any sort of actual physical issues that are interrupting your life, please get in touch with your doctor and talk to them or the emergency room if that's whatever level it is of issue that you're having. And so thank you all for being here. And I will be talking to all of you next week.
Well, thank you, Susan. Thank you for the time to share with your audience. And I love the conversation we had today.
Yeah. Thank you.